You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
When she said, "I don't dance now, I make money moves," that was a mission statement for a whole new generation.
Respect, but that's not the Mount Rushmore. Listen, cash rules everything around me. When that line dropped, it changed the whole hustle. The greatest tracks are never finished. They're just debated forever. Introducing the Sprite Living Tracklist. 50 tracks that shape the culture from 6 decades of hip-hop. Scan the QR code on a Sprite or Sprite Zero Sugar to see the full breakdown. Obey your thirst. Sprite.
The moment a body is found, the clock starts ticking. 48 hours before the trail goes cold. From A&E and Crime House, this is the official podcast from the famous true crime series, The First 48. I'm Carter Roy. Every Thursday, I revisit a landmark homicide investigation in depth with long-form storytelling built for your ears. Listen to and follow The First 48 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. Welcome back to the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. I'm your host, Alice, and I'm joined, as always, by my takesy-backsy co-host, Brett.
Yep, that is, I believe, the legal term for what we will be discussing today, except usually it's no takesy-backsies.
I was going to say, this is the motion to please let me takesy-backsy. All right. If you have no idea what we're talking about, we are, of course, talking about Bryan Kohberger today. You may be saying, who? What? Kind of rings a bell. Oh, yes, indeed, because he probably hasn't been across your newsfeed for the past year. After confessing, appropriately, to murdering senselessly 4 college students in Idaho, and it was almost one day, minus a year, to the day he pled guilty and was sentenced to life without parole, that he makes the "I'd like to takesy-backsy my guilty plea" motion, which is the official legal term here at Prosecutors University.
And I'll give Bryan Kohberger one attaboy, and that's, unlike Mackenzie Shirilla, he can actually figure out what a year is from when his sentence becomes final, because that's how long you have to file the motion he filed, is 1 year. Not a year and a day, Mackenzie. No. Not a year and a day.
Not a year and a day where it's 0, where it falls on the day. Gotta be right before the year. And he counted, because, you know, he's a very smart person. He'll tell you just how smart he is. He's the smartest person in the world. And
failed penmanship, though.
The old penmanship. So he files a habeas motion. We'll talk about why it's a habeas motion. But in this case, it literally is a, "I'd like to takesy-backsy everything." Spoiler alert, we never hide anything from you. It's not going to succeed. There's nothing to worry about. Forget all the headlines that are like, "Oh my gosh, Bryan Kohberger's going to go to trial now. We're going to drag all this back up." Nope. He's going to be in prison forever. And we'll talk about why that is. But first of all, can we please talk about his penmanship? Because, okay, we talked about bite mark analysis and handwriting analysis and how you can't really rely on those to tell if someone's a serial killer. But man, so he wrote this motion by hand, by himself, because he waived his right to an appeal. So he's writing this by himself, pro se, no lawyer. And he writes it with serial killer penmanship, Brett. I don't know how else to describe it.
Look, I don't know if you go into Microsoft Word and you go to font, if there's a serial killer font, there may very well be. If there's not, Microsoft can just take this, upload it into the system, and use it, because this is serial killer font. It is just, it's amazing.
It's just like the like small, okay. We have to talk about this because this is all that I could focus on, because the arguments were also so bad, and we'll get into his 3 arguments that are not real arguments. But the penmanship gripped me, because I'm not kidding when I say he is in prison on life without parole. He has nothing to do. And he tells you that. He tells you just how bored and horrible prison is in his motion. He could at least take a ruler out and write straight. But instead, he writes like small and little, like they're not even the same font. If this were a font, it would be like within one word, you'd have like 6 different fonts, and they don't line up at all. And he can't really spell his own name right. It looks like Kohberger. But
it's like he's writing a ransom note. You know how
really
you cut out the
like
different letters and put them together. So, that's kind of what it looks like to me.
And I say this because this is really important, right? Like, this is his plea to get out of jail. And not only does it look like it was written by a drunk child? Are we allowed to say that? Like, it's not just a child, because I have children and they write better than this. But it is the penmanship. You should, hopefully I've now sparked your attention to go read his motion, because we always tell you to go to the primary sources. It's only 8 pages long. It's actually a form that you can get in prison. So most of it is, thank goodness, printed out. So you don't have to read all of it in his handwriting. So, Brett, you are our storied appellate chief for the last 7 or 8 years. Your job was to read handwritten habeas petitions from prisoners, and you've read thousands of them. I know this because whenever I would get one, I would throw it on your desk, because I did not want to get a migraine from reading it. Now, having read thousands of them, and you are our storied professor of habeas petitions by the pro se defendant, where does this rank on a scale of 1 to 10 of goodness?
Well, and I'll say this. Probably not thousands, but I'll take hundreds. Certainly hundreds. So there's a few things that are immediately striking about this. And I promise you, we're going to get into the serious law stuff. But first, we're going to make fun of this guy, because he deserves to be made fun of.
He was a quadruple murderer. He deserves a little bit of criticism.
He's a mockable person, and he needs to be mocked at every turn. But I will say this. I have read hundreds of these. I have read these by people who didn't graduate from high school, have no education. There's no reason to think they should be able to string together a sentence. They are more coherent and better argued than what Bryan Kohberger, who supposedly was like a PhD student in criminology, has managed to put together in this. Aside from the handwriting. The other thing about the handwriting and what this says about Kohberger. So in prison, there's a few things, honestly. I mean, and I think Kohberger's basically held in solitary, so he doesn't really have any friends in prison. To the extent he gets out into the general population, I'm sure no one likes him. Typically, they're prison lawyers who help you with these things, and there are prison penmen who write them for you, and their handwriting is beautiful.
Some of the most like print.
Beautifully written things I've ever seen are these petitions, these habeas petitions. Obviously, he didn't have any help, either legally or in the handwriting. But, I mean, as Alice said, as it's sloppy, it's not serious. He doesn't even take it seriously. His arguments are silly. He doesn't back them up with any law, which you can get. Prisons have law libraries. When I was reading these, they would cite to cases. Like they're citing to cases and making legal arguments.
They have access to, I believe a lot of them, if you request it, have access to the legal research engines that we practicing lawyers use, like Westlaw and Lexis. I know them to give like licenses to prisons, and you may not be able to sit on it all day because it does cost money. But if you requested time to do research on one of these legal search engines that lawyers all have access to, you can. And you know what's on these search engines? Actual briefs filed in the same courts under the same, law, where you can pull them and basically copy them. So we'll see a lot of basically copy and paste types of habeas motions, copying the law, trying to apply the facts, because they all allege basically the same types of arguments. I'm innocent, or my counsel was ineffective. These are things that he says as well.
Yeah, and look, just so you're aware, because obviously it's Idaho, and a lot of people didn't get the coverage they thought they were going to get out of this case because they thought there'd be a trial. And so you're seeing the same like clickbait stuff, the same screaming headlines, the same, oh my goodness, is he going to get out? And like I said, we're not hiding the ball at all. I mean, you can just turn it off right now if you want to, because there's no chance this is going to succeed. But when you look at something like this, there are a few things that are immediately obvious. Number one, very common arguments. Ineffective assistance of counsel is the basis for most post-conviction review petitions. He easily could have gotten his hands on something that was a little bit more sophisticated than this and done a better job. Number two of the most common arguments is my guilty plea was involuntary. Because usually that's the only way you can really even succeed in these. Remember, a couple things just to point out, little technical things, just so you're aware. Number one, he signed a guilty plea. He signed a plea agreement. He signed away his appeal rights. This is not an appeal. This is post-conviction relief. This is habeas. This is my conviction was in violation of the Constitution. You typically can't sign that away. You hold on to that even when you plead guilty. If you can actually make an argument that you are convicted in obvious violation of your constitutional rights, that's something we're going to allow you to appeal. We're not going to allow you to raise like, my suppression hearing should have gone differently, or this evidence should have came in, or this evidence should have. You're not going to let you do all of that, the typical sort of appeal stuff, or to appeal like your sentence typically. But if you're appealing, hey, my counsel was ineffective, and that ineffectiveness led to the plea itself being involuntary. So I know I pled guilty, but you have to understand that plea is completely invalid. It was invalid from the moment I entered it because I was misled and I was coerced and I was forced to do this. And so you shouldn't hold me accountable for the plea. That's essentially what he's arguing here. And he's using two different arguments. I mean, really, it's one argument. His argument is essentially his lawyer's ineffective because they coerced him both by lying to him and keeping things from him to enter into a plea that was false. That is essentially the argument he's making. He breaks it into three parts, and we'll talk about those parts as we continue through this.
Yes. And so like we said, this really is 8 pages long. It is a form that you probably get from the prison library, and you fill in the blanks. And that's what he does here. So he has to explain each of these three, and there isn't much detail in here, and we'll read them to you. So this application is broken down into 3 arguments. The first one, he says, failure to disclose of review exculpatory evidence, and he puts in parentheses, i.e. unknown hair in Chapin's hand during plea discussions. So the first thing he's saying is, this is actually more under like direct appeal. He's like, oh, the evidence. Okay, he's pointing to one piece of evidence in the entire file. Do you remember, we've read a lot of things in this case, despite it ending in a guilty plea, a lot was made public, I think, in the search warrant. All of his phone data, all of his histories, the pings going back and forth, going dark at certain times, driving by the house after the murders, before the murders, scoping things out, his knife sheath with his DNA on it. I mean, lots of evidence. You can imagine looking at the totality. We are not looking at one errant piece of evidence, especially when there's a mountain of evidence against him and death penalty was on the table, that we thought, of course, he should absolutely plead guilty, which he did at the probably good counsel of his lawyer.
Guys, if you're like me, it's not that unusual to finish lunch and then find yourself reaching for a snack an hour later. Sometimes you notice cravings taking over, even when you're trying to eat healthy. In fact, that's when they happen the most. And that's the problem Pendulum Metabolic Daily was designed to help solve. Pendulum Metabolic Daily is a science-backed probiotic designed to support your body's natural GLP-1 response, help you feel fuller longer, experience fewer cravings, and make it easier to stay on track with your health goals. Just one capsule a day with food. Some customers report noticing fewer cravings and more energy in as little as a week, though individual results can vary. I can tell you, I have just started taking it, and as I go through it, I will let you know exactly how it works on me.
So Metabolic Daily is a 5-strain probiotic. It's not just one ingredient doing the work, but a system that supports your metabolism, helps keep your energy steady, and helps cut down on sugar cravings. And Pendulum Metabolic Daily was developed by PhD scientists from Harvard, Berkeley, and Stanford. It's the #1 GI doctor recommended Akkermansia probiotic, and it's backed by clinical research. You can also get automatic deliveries every month or every 3 months. Plus, you may even be able to buy it using pre-tax FSA or HSA dollars. Right now, podcast listeners can get an exclusive 20% off their first order at pendulumlife.com/prosecutors. That's pendulumlife.com/prosecutors for an extra 20% off your first order. Again, that's pendulumlife.com/prosecutors and get 20% off today.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
And look, this is not, and I saw a lot of people say this, Bryan Kohberger is withdrawing his guilty plea. Bryan Kohberger no longer is pleading guilty. No.
Nope, can't do that.
That's over. If he had agreed to plead guilty and before the guilty plea he'd said never mind, that's withdrawing your guilty plea. That's saying you want to go to trial. Once you stand up in court and raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth and then say, I did it, I killed these people, I'm guilty. Once you do that, there's no withdrawing your guilty plea. At that point, you have to show that your constitutional rights were violated. And the way you typically do that when you have this situation with attorney-client is the bar is so incredibly high. You have to show, number one, that your counsel was deficient in their performance. That already is going to be hard to show that his very capable counsel who did a lot of good things for him was deficient. But honestly, probably the court's not even going to get to that because they're just going to talk about the prejudice prong. And the prejudice prong, whenever you have a guilty plea, is you have to show that were it not for whatever happened, no reasonable person would have pled guilty. It's not like I wouldn't. I am telling you I wouldn't have pled guilty if I knew that. No. We're not letting you play those games. It has to be that given the totality of the circumstances, had the thing not happened, no reasonable person would have pled guilty. So, for instance, if like you were beaten in your cell before to force you to plead guilty, okay, we're going to let you out of that, right? You're obviously coerced into it. Something like this, he would have to show that this supposed evidence, if it even exists, and if it's even significant, and the reporting I've seen has varied. There's one report that there was like a single hair in Ethan's hand that was probably his own hair, but it's hair, so it's really hard to match it to anything, and they couldn't match it to anything, and nobody cared, and they moved on. Some of the more conspiratorial people will say it was more than it was a whole clump of hair, whatever, who knows, who cares? It doesn't really matter, because you would have to show that despite all the evidence Alice just talked about, this piece of evidence is so powerful that no reasonable person who knew about this piece of evidence would still plead guilty because it so obviously exonerates them that there's no way you would have pled guilty if you had known about this piece of evidence. That's how strong it has to be. This ain't that.
Like, you know what it would be? If the sheath had someone else's DNA on it, like maybe that, something like that, where we didn't even know there was a sheath at all. Maybe that's not even, honestly, I think it'd have to be like security footage saw a woman stabbing them. And it was like,
yeah,
what?
Seriously.
What? It was
and then they found a knife
him.
that had unknown woman's DNA on it.
Right.
And then they hid all that from him. Like it had to be
because
they
wanted to frame it on this PhD, Boy Scout.
And the reason it's so high is because he pled guilty. And we leave this narrow avenue for, well, maybe you pled guilty because you just felt like you had no chance. And even though you're innocent, you had to do it. And man, if only you had known, there was video of a woman stabbing them, and they found a knife that had an unknown woman's DNA on it, and then they lost the knife, and then they never told you about it. I mean, something like that.
And remember, we did a guilty plea legal briefs as well. This is not something that you just decide and you kind of raise your hands like, yeah, sure, I've plead guilty. You file a change of notice to change your not guilty plea. Usually there's days, weeks in between when you actually appear before the judge.
Sign a bunch of documents, usually.
You sign a ton of documents. And then when you come before the judge has a colloquy of dozens of questions that they are required by law to ask you, to walk you through in layman's terms exactly what you are pleading guilty to, what you are giving up, and if in fact this is your true statement. They're not talking to your lawyer. For once, they're not talking to your lawyer. They're talking to you, and you have to answer with verbal yeses and nos. It is a long colloquy. You could probably find the transcript of his guilty plea as well. So this is not something that he didn't know what he was doing. In fact, it's asked multiple times by the judge in court on the transcript. Do you understand? Is there anything that would impede your ability to understand? Did you take any medication today that would impede your ability to understand what is going on here? Do you know what it means to plead guilty? Do you understand what this means to your appeal rights? It's incredibly tedious on purpose because we do not take this lightly. And we go through all of that process because you are, in fact, giving away a lot of rights when you plead guilty. You also get a lot, by the way, like taking death penalty off the table.
And I'll just give you an example of how high the bar is on this, because it was a case I worked on right before I left the U.S. Attorney's Office that literally was argued today by someone else, because obviously I'm not there anymore. I wrote the brief, they did the argument. But this is how hard it is to get out of a plea. So there was a guy, he gets charged with a couple crimes, and the office agreed to drop one of the charges, and he would plead guilty to the other one. And his attorney basically told him, okay, well, since they're dropping that other charge, max you're looking at 2 years in prison. He gets to the sentencing, and the judge is like, okay, so we're looking at, 15 to life here? And he's like, whoa. I was told it was only going to be 2. And the judge was like, well, yeah, you didn't plead guilty to that, but it's still relevant conduct. And under the sentencing guidelines, relevant conduct still considered, even if you don't plead guilty to it. And his attorney was just completely wrong, had completely misinformed him about what the max was going to be and what he could receive and all this other stuff. He ends up getting sentenced to 15 years in prison, going through the whole appeal process. There's all these good arguments that he shouldn't succeed. The 11th Circuit had oral argument on the question because it is an interesting legal question. It's a close question. We'll see how it goes. That's how bad it has to be for you to get out of a guilty plea. And it's not even clear that guy's going to get out of it. He may very well lose because the standard is so high, because he still pled guilty. He still said he did it. And so now he's like, well, was it really knowing and voluntary when I didn't know exactly what I was potentially going to get? Well, I guess we'll see. But that's the burden you have. It's a massive burden. It's a really high burden. And, in that one, at least it really seems pretty clear that the attorney was ineffective, right? Like the attorney telling him, oh, yeah, you're looking at 2. And then it's like, oh, you're looking at 15. And the attorney was just like, yeah, I just completely didn't know. I had no idea that was going to be relevant conduct. And the attorney just fell on his sword, which they often do. Now, in this case, though, this lawyer isn't falling on her sword. She's not going to say he didn't know about all the discovery. She's going to say he had every piece of discovery. This was in discovery. The existence of this hair was in discovery. He knew about this. So he's not even going to be able to show that part. He's not even going to be able to show ineffectiveness. And honestly, he's bringing this up because this is one of the Cobro's talking points. Is there's unknown hairs. As we all know, in every case that has ever existed, there's going to be unknown DNA, unknown hairs, unknown fingerprints. It always happens. And every time it happens, in every case, you're going to have the person, whether it's Adnan Syed or Julia Beverly or Darlie Routier or Scott Peterson, all of them are always going to say, see, that's the guy. That the unknown hair. Clearly, that's not hair from the fact that a bunch of people lived in this home and this was a party house, or that it was the place that people rented when they were going through college. It must be the hair of the actual person who did it, not me, who was forced to plead guilty. It couldn't have been me, right? That's what they always say. So that's essentially his first argument. And his first argument, as weak as it is his strongest argument.
I was going to say, and look, I guess PhD program did something. He did put his strongest argument first, which is what you're supposed to do. Because the next two are so weak that, well, I don't know. It is kind of funny. His second argument is that he's actually innocent, which is interesting that that's not his first argument, because the first argument is, I would not have pled guilty but for the strong evidence, rather than, I am so innocent. Second, see this evidence? It would show that I'm innocent. So it is kind of funny that his first argument is not that he's innocent. So he writes, he says he was convinced that actual guilt was not an important factor in considering plea acceptance, and that death row was imminent and advised to lie. And he was told to give a legal victory in entering a false plea. So essentially he's saying, I was told to lie, that I actually did it, but I'm really actually innocent. The margarita.
So this is another common one. I'm really innocent, but I was just, lying.
I was afraid of the death penalty.
Yeah. So once again, the law anticipates these kind of arguments, and the law prepares for them. And the way it prepares for them is there's an incredibly strong presumption that every time you said you did it and you were guilty in writing and in front of the judge repeatedly, that you were telling the truth then. And when you said I wasn't threatened, you were telling the truth. And, in
fact, one of the things the judge says, this is like word for word, because we've all heard it so many times at this point, Brett and I, whether we're clerking or as prosecutors, is, and when you plead guilty, is it because you are actually guilty? That's like basically the exact thing. Mm-hmm. And the judge, if you don't answer loud enough, he'll say, can you repeat that clearly for the court reporter? Yes. They don't move on until you answer that question.
And so now he wants to say, well, actually, I'm not guilty. So as we said, this kind of ties into the first one. Number one, you really need a lot of evidence. But number two, even assuming what he says is true, it's not even clear that that's a problem. Because as we know, you can plead guilty in this country, even if you're not guilty. You can plead guilty and maintain your innocence if you want to, because the courts have all said, look, people make rational decisions, and sometimes it's rational to plead guilty when you're not guilty because it avoids things like the death penalty, which was on the table here. So I can imagine his lawyer did tell him that if you Alfred plea, like maybe we could get him to do an Alfred plea, and then you don't necessarily have to admit guilt. I could imagine the state said, we're not doing an Alfred plea. He either pleads guilty or nothing. And she goes back and says, look, I said the Alfred plea. They said no. So it's either guilty or nothing. What do you want to do? Do you want to roll the dice on death penalty? You want to plead guilty? He says plead guilty. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that entire back and forth. And that's probably exactly what she's going to say. What's going to happen when you file an ineffective assistance of counsel claim? You waive your attorney-client privilege as to the issues in the claim. So that what happens just sort of procedurally is they check the date. Was it timely? It's timely within a day. You had 365. You got it in 364. Then they'll file something and it'll say, hey, attorney, there are allegations of ineffective assistance of counsel. Please file an affidavit in response within 60 days. And then counsel writes an affidavit where they either say, yep, they're 100% right, I did all that, or they dispute it. If they dispute it, then there's technically a factual question. Now, if the court finds that legally you haven't even met your burden, we dispose of that, get rid of the thing and dismiss it. If the court says, hey, if the facts alleged in the petition were true, then you would be entitled to relief. We're going to have an evidentiary hearing. The attorney comes because we can't decide factual allegations on affidavits. The attorney comes, she's questioned, she repeats everything she says in the affidavit, and the court invariably says, I credit what the attorney said, not what the serial killer dude said. And so I'm siding with her. You're dismissed, right? I mean, that's essentially what's going to happen. So we'll see if she says, yeah, he's right, I told him to go in there and lie. I doubt she's going to say that, but we'll see. But even if she does, it does not necessarily mean he meets the standard, because once again, the burden is really high on him to show that but for her improper advice, he would have insisted on going to trial. Meeting that burden in this case, impossible.
And here's why it's complete farce. He was not told to lie, I don't believe. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he was like, I'm so innocent. And they came and were like, you have to say you're guilty. Here's why. Because of his third argument, Brett. It's too good.
I'll say this. In all those hundreds of filings, never seen this one.
This, he gets an A for creativity, because I will say, I did spit out my coffee as I was reading this morning and spewed coffee all over the paper, because this was laugh out loud good, actually. I will read what he wrote and then I will paraphrase it. So he wrote, number 3, the reason he must get to takesy backsy. A gross misrepresentation of and promises regarding what a life sentence would immediately afford petitioner, and a gross misrepresentation of death row in Idaho, including an elaborate fabricated story of counsel's horrific experience touring an actual 8x8 death row cell, all communicated to petitioner and his family, allegedly by IDOC, through counsel, thus constituting threats and promises made to induce a plea agreement. If you don't understand his PhD level legalese, let me break it down for you. Prison really sucks, guys. And I was told that death row was worse, but I think death row is actually probably better. And I'd rather be over there instead. So let me takesy backsy. That's what he just wrote.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, I want to vacate my plea because prison's awful and I'd rather be on death row. I mean, that's literally what he's saying.
Literally what he wrote.
It is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that. Anything even approaching that.
It is crazy. Like, I don't even know how to respond to this because it is that bad. I mean, yes, his counsel came in and was like, do you want to die? They're going to put a needle in your arm. You're going to die because you so did it. Look at the strength of this evidence. You're going to drag everyone through this. You're going to be convicted 1,000,000 times over and you're going to die on death row or plead guilty. Like, that's probably what he said, which is totally true.
Yeah, this is all good lawyering. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
to the extent an opinion is even written in this case, it's basically going to be, you got a really good lawyer who gave you some really good advice. And one thing we'll point to is the fact that the victim's family's like, sure, vacate his conviction. Let's go. Let's go to trial. Let's do a death penalty. You want to be on death row? Let's put you on death row. You want to do that? Which I will say this. There have been so many times where I've walked into my boss's office and been like, let's just agree to it. This guy was looking at life in prison. He got 15 years and now he's appealing. Let's say he's right. Let's vacate
And let's just go
this
for the
plea,
max 50.
and let's go. Let's go to trial. We're ready. You know? I mean, and of course the boss is always like, no,
Take a breath, Brett.
we're not going to do that. We're going instead to just defend the conviction, which is what you end up doing.
That boss may have been me one time.
Yeah. I mean, some of them you're just like, what
I know, they
in
are
the world?
So in Red in Toto, you can see what he's doing here. He was not lying. Hidden evidence was not kept from him. There isn't some smoking gun in this case that nobody knew about that would absolutely make any reasonable person not plead guilty. And he's doing this because he's bored. It's 364 days before the 365th day deadline, so he can count very well. Wonderful. And he has nothing else to do in prison because he's in solitary confinement. He can't even work on his handwriting, apparently. And so he wrote this and he filed it because why not? Got nothing else to do. Might as well write a complete bogus and laughable motion that's going to waste court resources. But boy, has it made the media have so much fun. And
Yeah, I
guess
mean,
who's back in the news?
Bryan Kohberger. And he called the
Exactly.
New York Times, and it's like, you should just hung up on this guy. Like, why are you even talking to this guy? The whole thing's absurd. It's silly and stupid. It's not surprising. I'd have to go back and listen to our episode about whether or not we said he invariably would file one of these, but
I think we did because we said that he loved. First of all, I didn't think he'd plead guilty because I thought he was so
full of himself.
in love with himself. But then if he did plead guilty, that he would absolutely file something like this because he is so in love with himself.
And look, he probably knows there are tens of people out there who
Yeah.
defend him. He's probably seen, he's like, man, if people would go to bat for Scott Peterson, somebody would go to bat for me, you know, or he sees like the Tyler Robinson thing and he thinks maybe I can get a really good conspiracy going. Like Candace Owens says he's innocent. I mean,
Does she really?
Yeah. He probably saw that and was like, shoot, I should have gone to trial. What was I
think
thinking?
he thinks this is one of the most notorious, famous murders in recent history, but it did not get the attention that I wonder if he heard people in prison saying like, oh, you're the Idaho 4 guy? Man, I thought that was going to be a huge deal. And like, nothing. Everyone's forgotten about you. So some of you have asked, why did he file this? I don't know. Maybe he does think it's going to succeed because he's that into him. He also didn't think he was going to get caught. Remember? He was caught within like days, right? So he thought he was so smart that he would never get caught. He did get caught. He might think, because he's the smartest person in the room, that this will succeed. But more so than anything, I think that he misses being in the spotlight and he's bored because prison is boring and he has nothing else to do. So why not? And this gets the New York Times talking to him. This gets maybe more people interested in doing documentaries about him. This gets him back into the limelight, no matter in what way.
And I'll be honest with you, I think if he thought it would succeed, he wouldn't have filed it. Because I do think he's a coward. I think he was afraid of dying. He was afraid of being executed. He didn't want to be shot. That's why he pled guilty. At the end of the day, his desire for notoriety could not overcome his cowardice. And that's why he didn't go to trial. He knows this is going to fail, but he also knows he's going to get that moment in the spotlight that Alice talked about. He's going to fire up people who believe in him, and they're going to send money to his commissary, and they're going to talk about how he's really innocent. Maybe he'll get a documentary, and who knows, maybe even an innocence movement, right? He knows all this is going to happen, and I think that's exactly why he's doing it. Not because it's legally feasible.
Here's how I see and I could be totally wrong about this, but here's how I see the saga of Bryan Kohberger to continue to play out. So he filed this habeas. It's going to fail. We're going to forget about him again. We will never forget about the victims, but he's exactly where he should be, rotting in jail. He is then going to make a pitch to some podcaster or some documentarian at some time. Exclusive interview, but he's not going to say he's guilty because it's still going to hang on to this. Remember, we're on the saga, right? And he's going to say, I didn't kill them, but I know what happened. And exclusive interview. All this hubbub, nothing's going to come of it, obviously, because he's the one who did it. Or he's going to drop all this information and people who are listening are like, sounds like you're the one who did it. Still nothing. He's going to die away. No one's going to care. There's not going to be anything. And then a few years down the line, he's completely forgotten. He's old and gross looking because he probably doesn't work out in prison either because he's not practicing his handwriting either. And then maybe he'll do a if I did it, how I did it sort of interview. And it'll just keep going like this. So he deserves no attention. He deserves no time on any news page. I hope people stop giving it to him. For what it's worth, this case has a lot less shenanigans around it than other cases. And I attribute that to his attorneys, really. They have not so far gone hungry for media attention the way some attorneys have. He's going to continue to try things like this. So this will not be the last time we see Bryan Kohberger in the news. And each of the times he's going to appear in the news, it's going to be of his own making.
And look, I mean, one of the issues with life in prison is the longer that passes between the murder and present, the more people are willing to listen to arguments of innocence. I think you saw that with Scott Peterson. When Scott Peterson was convicted, nobody thought he was innocent. And one of the reasons they didn't think he was innocent is because they sat through the trial and they heard the evidence and they knew the evidence because of the reporting. And so they're like, of course he did it. Of course he did it. His wife goes missing on the day that he's fishing an hour and a half away from home. He spends 30 minutes out there and then her body turns up in the bay several months later after a storm. I don't need to hear anything else. Oh, and by the way, he's having an affair at the time and he started looking for a boat the day after the affair. He gets confronted with being married. And he tells the woman he's having an affair with that he lost his wife. Yeah, he did it, right? Like everybody knew he did it. But then time passes and, he accumulates some followers and some people who really want to fight for him. People forget what the evidence is. Then they start to hear things that The defense did not put in a trial because they knew how easily it would be shot down. The witnesses who saw the woman with the dog and all this other stuff, it starts to percolate up, and then somebody writes a book, and then somebody does a documentary, and then somebody picks it up on a podcast, and Crime Junkie says maybe he's innocent after all. And then all of a sudden, there's all these people who believe maybe he's innocent. And those of us who remember the trial are like, what in the world are you people talking about? But there's fewer and fewer of us because more and more time has passed. If he just maintains his innocence from this point forward, says he was framed, says it was some sort of occult sacrifice by Odinist, he can play this out for a really long time. Jeffrey McDonald eventually is going to die in prison. It seems like the man's going to live forever. But just think about the books and documentaries and everything else written about him. And I just feel like that's what he's going to go for. He's going to keep pushing this and hope that in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, enough time has passed and enough people believe the conspiracy that he's able somehow magically to get out. Now, usually this doesn't end with you magically getting out. Adnan Syed is one of the few examples of someone who actually did the thing who then got out. Most of these innocence campaigns actually fail. And I think we've seen that in most of them. But nevertheless, I think that has to be his strategy. And number one, always being remembered and in the press and having his name out there. This was always about notoriety for him. So it doesn't surprise me that he's done this, and he's going to continue to do things just like it.
Well, for once, this didn't take a whole hour. I think that shows you, despite how verbose we are, just how thin this motion is. So I guess we should answer some questions because...
Sure, why not?
I am surprised he hasn't opened up a line of pen pals to answer questions from your favorite serial killer.
There you go. Falsely accused mass murderer. Because
falsely accused mass murderer.
He was a very bad serial killer, so he didn't get to the serial part.
That's I don't know. Killing 4 in one night.
Don't give him too much credit. He wants to be a serial killer.
And he has all the makings of it.
Oh, he
had it not been for our friends at Othram who caught him.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Oh, somebody, we gotten this question a couple times, and I felt
Let's do it. I do kind of love it when people ask the same question over and over. I'm like, maybe the first answer wasn't good enough. Try again, guys.
Okay, so I don't know what it is with some of y'all on the 5-star questions. It bothers you. If you don't know about this, if you leave a 5-star review, we will answer a question if you want to include it. And some people, this deeply offends them to their core. And so we've been asked a couple times, and we've been asked again whether or not offering to answer a question in exchange for a 5-star review is extortion.
No, because you can leave a 5-star review without asking a question, and no one's forcing you to ask a question. It's called discourse, and if you want to discourse with us, you're welcome to.
Right. So
it's kind of like, is a coupon extortion?
If you go to McDonald's and you order a coffee and they say that'll be $2, are you being extorted? The answer is no. Extortion basically is when through force or threat or fear or violence you obtain something you're not entitled to. That's extortion. That's what extortion actually is. When you offer something to me and I offer something to you, that's what we call an exchange. This is trade. This is the basis of capitalism. So no, in short, it is not extortion to do that.
But I feel like we can be friends.
If I sent you an email and said, hey, I have compromising information about you, unless you leave a 5-star review, I'm going to release it. That would be blackmail, and extortion. Blackmail and extortion tend to go together.
Hand in hand. You usually need to extract something.
A lot of times extortion is public official type stuff, like you're extorting something, as opposed to blackmail tends to be more of a private person. But either way, I think we're
not
good on
you.
that. So,
you don't have to ask a question, and guess what?
Thank you.
Plenty of people ask us questions.
It's true.
And we answer them.
It's true.
Without reviews.
Okay, so Brooke wants to know, can you discuss the difference between pleading no contest and an Alford plea? So, that's an interesting question. In some ways, they're similar. One thing, no contest pleas aren't actually available everywhere in every situation. That's sort of a jurisdictional thing, whether they have that, where you can just say, no, you're not going to contest the charge. It is similar in that you're basically saying you got enough to convict me. Now, usually with a no contest, you're not affirmatively stating your innocence. You're not saying, I am innocent but pleading guilty anyway. Whereas with an Alfred plea, you're very much saying, I am innocent. I didn't do this, but I know they have enough evidence to convict me, and it's better for me to go ahead and plead guilty because, for instance, I don't want the death penalty. Oh,
but that is a really great. Remember, most criminal cases, there's different jurisdictions each state. And so they're called, and we're covering this right now in the Lindsay Clancy trial, right? Massachusetts has slightly different law around these sorts of things. So
Brittany, you probably never saw the movie Megan.
Is it a horror movie?
No. Again, it is. I'll give you the basics.
I don't even want to know. Okay, tell me about Megan.
Which this is probably how we're all going to die. But Megan is about a robot that is built and marketed and turns into a murderer, basically.
Sounds great, and also probably is how we're all going to die.
So the question is, Ray Megan, this is from Brittany, Ray Megan, I'm wondering what charges could be brought against any of the characters in the movie. How do you legally hold someone accountable for building a murderous robot that wasn't intentionally programmed to be a murderous robot?
Like your Frankenstein.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, when you say not intended, of course, no one's going to say they intend to do something. But if you leave open the avail, this is kind of, I think, kind of like I shot into the crowded movie theater, not intending to kill anybody. But if you have reckless disregard for life. So if you are building a robot that has the availability to, cross, there are no, things that stop it. I don't know. I'm not a programmer, but it is in the realm of possibility. Your intent doesn't really matter. If you build something that is capable of it, I think it's going to be fact intensive, but I definitely think there is a pathway to liability.
You don't have to wonder about this because it's already happened.
No.
Robots kill
terrifying.
people.
Oh, that's
all
true.
the time.
Cars.
And in fact, there was a case out of Alabama, Middle District of Alabama, against Ajin, I believe, is the name of their AJIN.
Yes.
Where there was a robot. It was a robot that builds cars. And this young woman was, I forget what she was doing, but she was in the area of the robot doing some maintenance. The robot was supposed to be turned off. The robot turns on. The robot kills her. And the company, and you can look this up, the company was eventually held criminally liable for her death. Not just civilly liable, but criminally liable because of various safety things that they had avoided, negligence that they were engaged in, all sorts of stuff that could be proven about how they maintained the robot and how they protected their workers. So that would be what you would do. You would want to show that the people who work for the company knew there was a possibility that this robot was going to go crazy and could, under certain circumstances, do horrible things. And if you were able to prove that knowledge, or if you were able to prove that anyone working in the industry should have known this was an obvious danger and they didn't do anything about it, they also could be criminally liable. So that's the answer to your question. It's happened before, and it will probably happen again. All right. Well, that was fun.
Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed. Someone said it earlier, I think. It's pretty funny. Like Prosecutors Unscripted. It is really fun. This is why this podcast works 6 years later. Is I just have a lot of fun when you're drinking a margarita discussing these cases with you. But let us know what you think. If you think we have been much too harsh on Mr. Kohberger and his handwritten filing, let us know. We are also allowed to debate back with you. You don't even have to leave a 5-star review to let us know what you think, because that's not extortion. With all of that, always let us know what you want us to talk about. That's why I love Legal Briefs. We get to cover things in real time and try to be as swift as possible. Brett, is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off for the evening? I mean, you have a whole margarita there still to go.
I was right. It is Ajin. A-J-I-N.
Yeah, I remember because I would pass it. It's a really interesting case, actually.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of stuff written on it. You can read all about it. They pled guilty, and they ended up paying $1.3 million because of it. So there you go.
There you go. Well, guys, you know how to reach us. prosecutorspod@gmail.com or on all the social medias. But we'll be back soon again, because if you're following, we are covering the Lindsay Clancy trial basically in real time. So there's going to be a lot of that over the next few weeks and months. But until next time, I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutors' Legal Briefs.
Have a Kohberger? We do have Kohberger, don't we?
We do.
We have an Idaho. Let's see, where is that? I think it's the house, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, the house, you're right. I can't believe they destroyed it so quickly.
Yeah, I still think that was a mistake. But
I
whatever.
did too. I mean, he pled guilty. Well,
That's true. It ended up not mattering.
and it's gonna stick. So
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, hold on. Hannah's Art. That'd be Idaho? It'd probably be Idaho, because I think
yeah, I would think
before we knew
Idaho 4.
who Kohberger was. Let's download that.
Hello, and welcome to Pluto Phone. If you know the name of the movie you'd like to see, just stream it for free on Pluto TV, where all your blockbuster favorites are landing all summer long. Catch Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
Fantastic.
The Matrix Trilogy.
Welcome to the real world.
Mean Girls.
Shut up.
Titanic.
I'm the king of the world.
And so much more. For showtimes, press nothing. They're free 24/7.
That is so fetch.
On Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.